flash drive. Oh, thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Oh. Okay. Oh, yeah.
I'm the one that does both that computer and this.
Oh, thank you.
I brought it up for Wednesday. I was like, I felt like I should have had it today. It's two. So like one half is all the and then the other half is that. I'm not 100% sure what's on there. It could be like my high school diary.
Did I recognize you without your sword?
I don't know how to open it though. Is it like?
Now,
Oh.
it's just raining.
Yeah, I just barely beat it.
Right?
Did you make any more desserts?
Did I what?
Make any desserts?
No, I got that job though.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, shoot, do I take it?
Oh, you haven't
And then
decided?
on Tuesday, Sarah, who's the undergraduate assistant, hired me to make the cake and cupcakes.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it's terrible, don't come, but if it's really good, you're like, wow.
That's
And
funny.
say nice things about me.
I know.
I saw that. Okay.
Or he's triggering us.
Oh yeah, yeah. So Anna basically she couldn't make it to the class. So, yeah. Oh yeah. Sorry. About
Oh, yeah, and then I was like trying to stick away from my retainer back in.
I didn't even see that, it was so smooth. No.
Hey, thanks. Nice haircut.
Oh, thanks. Thank you.
I noticed everything about
Oh
you.
yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
How are you?
Hey, everybody. Settle down. Okay, guys. Hey. Let's settle down. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to Social 362. Today we're in for a special treat. Chung Young is going to present the lecture on hierarchical linear models, panel data, and we're trading places. I'm going to be sitting in the back, guarding the printouts with my life. Everybody have the printout? Ah, very good. Okay, thank you, Chung Young. Take it away.
Thank you. All right. So let's start. So today we're going to talk about HLM models for panel data, and it'll be about how connecting the dots between HLM and panel models, especially about fixed effects models from the last lecture. And the main argument here is basically unobserved and observed panel and time constant differences across panels can be a source of correlated errors in panel data. And then how I'll be looking at how fixed effects models and random effects models can be a solution to that problem. So we're going to talk about non-IID errors. Can you see that clearly here? Good. All right. Good. Yeah. So we're going to talk about non-IID errors in HLM, basically review all the stuff. Either we have learned in the HLM lecture. And then I'll cover panel data and HLM and delve more into different random intercepts models for panel data, especially about the difference between fixed effects and random effects. And then there is an optional topic that is latent growth curve models. I'm not going to cover that in the class, but there are slides about that, so I'm happy to answer any of the questions you have about the topic. Good. Any questions so far? Nope. All right. Good. So let's review non-IID errors. So in the OLS regression, your term is assumed to be independent and identically distributed. But often this assumption is violated if you have nested data structure, especially. For example, let's see this graph. This graph is basically looking at the impact of parental income on GPA. And we have individuals or students nested within families. Does that make sense? Yep. All right. So as you can see right there, these two dots mean the students in family A, right? And they both have positive errors, right? And for family B's students, they both have negative errors. Does that make sense? So you see the pattern here, right? One error level can be expected from the other one. That's what it means by correlation of errors. Good. And the correlation of errors leads to unbiased and consistent slopes estimator still, but it leads to incorrect standard errors. So far, it's straightforward, right? It's all midterm 2 materials, I guess. Note that I'll quickly note that correlated errors bias the standard errors only when the independent variable is also correlated within clusters. So this is the picture we had in the previous slide. In the second picture, if you look at it, and you can see even though there are 3 families, and then there should be really 3 parental incomes as a result, right? But we have 6 students nested within 3 things. As a result, the sample size increases because of the nested structure, even though there are 3 families, right? Even though the OLS estimator is assumed, has assumed the IID error structure, and the variance of X, the X variable right here, is same in both cases. Does that make sense? So these 3 family incomes are replicated to 6 individuals. Right? Due to the replication, n-1 increased, but variance of X has not changed because variance of X is a measure of dispersion, right? How much dispersed they are. But in both cases, they are dispersed in the exact same form. Good. So that's why standard errors will be underestimated. Any questions so far? Nope. All right. There are 3 main approaches to dealing with correlated errors. The first one is aggregation, which is also called between effects models. So it's basically to avoid this correlation among errors. You are simply averaging all the observations by groups, right? While ignoring all the differences within families, you are just simply averaging all the variables by families. Good. Any questions? So as a result, it'll only look at differences across groups, differences across between groups. Good. And that's why it's called a between effects model. Good. Obviously, it has it loses a lot of variances because of the aggregation. I mean, of course, it solves the problem of correlation among errors, but it loses a lot of variations. Therefore, it is a very inefficient approach. Good. And the second one is cluster robust standard errors. So it's basically adjusting standard errors without touching anything with the slopes estimates, basically. So under very mild conditions, the standard errors are correct because it'll simply adjust the standard errors without doing anything with the slopes estimates. But they are still not efficient per se. Good. Correct standard errors, but inefficient standard errors, or this robust standard errors. Good. Any questions? Nope. All right. The third one is HLM. HLM is gives unbiased, consistent, and efficient estimators for the slope coefficients, as long as the assumptions are about the error structure are correct. So we're going to focus on our efforts on HLM for the remainder of the class, and then see how it solves the problem with correlated errors, or tries to solve the problem. So the basic approach of HLM is to decompose the total variance of errors into between variance components and within variance components. So you have, for example, GPA of family A, family B. There is student of 2.1, 2.0, 3.0, 3.0, 4.0. And 2 students belong to family A, and 2 students belong to family B. And then what we're doing here to calculate is to calculate family averages and then subtract the group averages to calculate the individual errors. It is noted as this one. The IJ used to be just this one, the errors, if you subtract the frame, right? But since there are some differences across groups, right? Family A has lower averages, right? The lower average, and family B has higher average. So to adjust that, we're simply subtracting the group average. Good. So that's what it means by decomposition of between variance of component and within variance component. So the variance of these, the differences across these will be between level variance, and this will be within level variance. Meaning that even after subtracting the family averages, how do you differ from the within family? Good. That was the whole point of HLM, right? I hope you still remember that, or if you haven't, but I hope that this is a good refresher of the memory. So in this case, Yij is noted as the outcome level of individual I, or 1, of the family 1. I means individual, and J means the group. Right? So Yij means the outcome level of individual I within J, group J. Good. And now HLM explains variance of Uj and variance of Eij with the introduction of compressors. We consider a random intercepts model that allows the intercepts to vary across groups. Meaning that if you combine these 2 terms, then group intercepts differ depending on the group, right? Group, it really means group averages. Does that make sense so far? All right. And then after that, you are explaining both why individuals differ within groups and why groups differ. Good? Does that make sense? All right. So, Yij is consists of the random intercepts between variance between groups plus the variable, the independent variable, and the remaining within variance. And this group differences can be decomposed into the explained parts by group characteristics and group level differences, remaining group differences that we don't know. So the first two terms, gamma 00 and gamma 01, are called fixed effects because they're fixed. These group differences in group averages are fixed or explained. So that's why they are called fixed effects. But there are still some parts that we don't know about why these group averages differ. And that part is called random effect. Okay. This fundamental logic of HLM can be elaborated by revisiting the previous figure, actually. This figure really illustrates how the difference in the intercepts across groups is a source of correlated errors. If you can see that, these two errors are positive, both positive, because the group intercepts is higher than the grand mean. Good. So the correlation among errors is induced by the group differences in the averages. Questions? So that's the key takeaway of this section. Group level intercept differences or average differences induce correlated errors. They're not two different topics. All right? Any questions? Nope. All right. Let's talk about panel data in HLM now. So let's talk about running example. So we're looking at the impact of firm size and profitability. They're both time varying. And then these firms are the unit of analysis, and these firms are measured repeatedly over time. So you have firm time 1, firm 1, time 2, firm 1, time 3, 1. Good. And then to estimate this causal effect of firm size and profitability, there are different variables related. There is a time constant on observed confounders, such as industry. And then there are time constant on observed confounders and time varying observed confounders. It'll be clarified as we proceed, but this is the whole thing. Firm sizes impact on profitability. And panel data follow multiple units of analysis over time, such as people, firms, and countries. So each panel means, say, a firm, or a person, or a country. And these panels are followed across time. Good. And panel data have a nested structure where the observations of each unit over time are nested within a panel. As you can see right there, these observations are nested within firm 1. And these observations, from 2, 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, 2, 4, these observations are nested within firm 2. So you see the nested structure in the data, right? And ROE, and which is profitability, and firm size changes within panel over time, as well as they vary across panels as well. Okay. So within the variance of ROE and firm size within panels really refers to within variance, and differences across panels refers to between variance. And the industry, ZI, here is not changing over time, so it's called time panel level variance, that is time constant. Just like the other types of nested data, the errors in the panel data are typically correlated, and it's over time, right, in this panel data. And they're called serial correlation or auto correlation. Just like the other types of correlated data, correlated errors, whereas the slope estimates remain unbiased and consistent, but standard errors are incorrect. Any questions? This figure really illustrates that, right? Firm 2's errors are positive on average, whereas Firm 1's errors generally negative on average. So it means that they are correlated with each other because the group intercepts are different. Right? Firm B's generally are doing better than Firm 1. Right? So that's why their errors are positive on average. Panel models are a special case of HLM, really, because it's basically HLM is a way of dealing with nested data, right? And if panel data is a type of nested data, then HLM panel models is just such a special case of HLM. Okay. And now the notation is right there, YIT. The outcome of panel I at time t. Okay. The rest of the notations are the same. Any questions so far? Nope. Is it too fast, or I think it's all review, so I think it should be okay. Right. All right. I see some nodding, so that's good. I guess that's a good sign, I guess. Anyways, so let's talk about random intercept models for panel data. So really, this slide actually nicely summarizes what I want to say in the class. So let's revisit the random intercepts model, but with a DAG right there. So what we're doing here is try to translate HLM into panel data. As a result, we can see this DAG right there. There are group differences, B0I, or panel differences. Does that make sense? The intercepts are different. The average across groups or panels are different. And that affects Y, the outcome, as well as the X variable, which is our treatment of interest. Let me back up a little bit. So we want to estimate the causal effect of X or firm size on YIT, the profitability measure. Good. And they are both time variable. They're not time constants. And what we're doing here is precisely because there are some random components in panel-specific intercepts. There are some differences across panels. In that way, so it really affects the outcome as well. So in that case, it's really a set of panel level characteristics that outcome YIT. Some of them we're observing them, but like ZI right there, industry. But the others we don't observe. Okay. And that affects YIT. The presence of the 0i, or the randomness in these beta 0i, really affects the outcome. The biases, the standard error of beta 1, because the error won't be IID. Good? Yep.
So the randomness affects beta 1.
Beta 0i.
So randomness affects beta 0i,
Uh-huh.
and that affects beta 1.
Beta 1's standard error.
Okay.
Because let's say we don't see that. Let's say we don't see that. But it really affects the remaining part of YIT, right? Which is the error of YIT. And the presence of this part actually violates IID assumption from what we saw in the graph in the HL. Random intercepts leading to correlation of errors. Good. If beta 0i does not affect XIT, then it doesn't, it only biases standard error. Good. But if it does bias, if it does cause XIT, then we have to control for this term. And that's fixed effects. That's what fixed effects models do. If that path is not there, then we don't really have to control for it. We just have to separate beta 0i from EIT. That's it. And work with EIT to calculate the standard errors after separating beta 0i. Any questions? Nope. Am I going too fast or going long? Right. Yep. All right. Yeah. Thank you. So FE models are for panel data are just random intercepts models. Really, it's an HLM model, but the panel specific intercepts are parameters to be estimated, which means that you are controlling for every intercept, panel specific intercepts, or group specific intercepts. Any questions? Okay. So it really means that you are including an indicator variable for each panel, panel numbers into the OLS regression. The fixed effects estimator uses a demeaning approach that subtracts the panel specific averages from variables like that. As you can see, there is panel level averages 2.0 for the outcome of interest. If you make an average of these four observations, you would get 2.0. Does that make sense so far? And then you're subtracting from the original variable. 2.0 minus 2.0, 0. Good. Any questions? Nope. All right. So what we're doing here is basically eliminating all the between variances by diminuting it. Okay. So all the observed and unobserved panel-specific characteristics that are time constant, they're gone. They're really gone. All the between variances, gone. Then what we have is within variance. Right? Variance across time within that pattern. How they change over time. How one person, one unit, one firm changes over time. That's what we're looking at. Good. And it is designed in such a way that it resolves the concern of serial correlations induced by intercept differences across panels. Why is that? I think it's pretty straightforward if you understood what I said so far. But anyone care to explain what's going on with that? How fixed effects models resolve the concern of serial correlations induced by intercept differences across panels. Anyone? Yep, Courtney.
This could be totally incorrect, but if you're removing all of the variance in between panels,
Mhm.
then you would remove all the correlations between the panels. Is that right?
Right. So in a way, yes. So a source of, as I said, it can be a source of serial correlations. That part is correct. Yeah, there are other sources, and that's why. But at least serial correlations or correlation among errors induced by intercept differences across panels, they're gone. Yes. So yes. Okay. Yep. Oh, sorry.
I was gonna say, can you say that one more time?
So yeah, so there are intercept differences, right? And that cause serial correlations among errors because one panel's errors will be playing around here. And it'll be higher than the grand mean, grand expected value. They tend to be higher. And so they're all positive, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, etc., etc. That means that you can expect each other from the others. Okay. That's correlation among errors. To resolve the concern, you're deleting it. Okay. Yep. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
So I'm trying to explain to myself and I'll see if I'm on the track. So essentially, it's like we said that the intercept is basically the average of each panel,
Mhm.
and those are different. So by deleting, we're essentially setting all the intercepts of each panel
Zero.
to zero. Okay.
And then, that's the sphere, fixed effects models. And we could add time varying variables, xt, xit, to the model. And then you're basically doing the same thing. You're demeaning the x variable as well. And with the demeaned variables, you are running the OLS regression. Good. So there will be a equation that look complicated, but it's just mean that you're running on OLS regression with the demeaned variables. Yeah, sure.
You asked a great question. So about the static errors, will they still be correlated?
I think
You
it'll
gave the
be
right answer. You gave the right answer. But
yeah, it'll
is some of the comments that come from the students. I just want to repeat what Chunyan has said to make sure that everybody gets this. So there's a widespread misconception in the literature that if you control for panel level fixed effects, that there will be no within panel serial correlation. Okay. Misconception is that controlling for the fixed effects will get rid of the serial correlation. And this is a misconception. It's wrong. It's not true. It is indeed possible to still have serial correlation left over after you have the fixed effects. Just what Jeremy had said.
Yeah.
So now, why might this be the case? Two reasons for that. Well, okay, let me just give you one reason. Basically, it could be that your fixed effect does not take care of all of the hierarchical ordering. So suppose that you have data on families that comprise 2 parents and 3 kids each. You now put a fixed effect on the family. It means that the source of serial correlation that comes from family level variables is taken care of. However, the errors of the kids could still be correlated because the kids all share a root. Right? So within panels, you still have some serial correlation, even though you put in a panel fixed.
yeah, that was good. Thank you. Yeah. So it'll be actually clarified with in the section of two-way fixed effects models and effect heterogeneity, peak variables. But yeah, thank you for the yeah. So where was I? So the slope is actually just looking at within effects of the data. How X changes over time within the panel affects the outcome of interest over time within the panel. Good, because all the between differences are gone. Any questions? So note that the meaning gives the same point estimates as the meaning variables for each panel to the OLS regression. It'll be just like that. You are adding, if you're adding dummy variables to the OLS regression, the slope estimates will be same. Because the coefficients of panel dummies capture the difference between the grand mean right there and the panel specific intercepts. The difference here will be the panel dummies coefficients. Okay. So you are subtracting all the panel specific intercepts or their differences in weight. So it means that F uses a lot of degrees of freedom, and it means that it's not efficient compared to plain open models. Good. Any questions? Nope. All right. Then let's add time constant variables Ci into the model. As you can see, compared to the previous slide, if you compare it, it'll look exactly the same. Because by the demeaning approach, Ci's will be dropped. Right? Does that make sense? Zi's were affecting the panel-specific intercepts, right? But now we are controlling them away, so there is no variance between variables. So Zi's will be dropped. And also notice that U0i, unobserved characteristics of the panel that makes the intercepts differences, are now also gone. They're gonzo. Good. It really is really illustrated in the deck right there, especially about the consequences of this approach. It really means that no confounding from any time constant variables, including regardless of whether they are observed or unobserved, because right there, beta 0i, the panel specific intercepts are controlled. Any questions? There's a drawback right there, right? In this case, in our running example, we're interested in the estimating of this one, right? Good. But if you're interested in causal effect of Zi on YIT, then you cannot really do anything about it in fixed effects models. Good. It'll be dropped no matter what. So, any questions? So, to summarize it, once again, the relationship, the causal effect of B0I on YIT influences or biases the standard error of beta 1. But it also biases beta 1 coefficient as well if beta 0I affects XIT. And free models, by controlling all of the between variances, you have less worrying things to worry, less concerns in that sense. In this DAG, actually, it really shows that unobserved time variant covariates can still bias the estimation of causal effects. So even if it's controlled, beta 0I is controlled right there. If there is a confounding relationship between X and E, then you are still having biases. So it means that time variant covariates can be a source of concern in the causal effect, the estimation of causal effect of XIT. Okay. Any questions? There is an equation right there. I don't expect you to understand it. I'm happy to answer the questions about it, but it's just not something that is expected for the exam or the problem sets. So don't worry about it if you're not interested. And random effects models. So random effects models, in the broader definition, is basically synonym as HLM. There are random effects components. But in the narrower sense, it's defined as a random intercepts model for panel data, where U0I or unobserved characteristics that affect the panel specific intercepts is not estimated or fixed, but considered as a random variable. You are simply deriving specific intercepts and not fixing it, and just letting it as a random. Good. Any questions? Nope. So random effects estimator use quasi-mean data, which means that it's subtracting a fraction of Hill's average. It is really reflected in the theta I right there. I don't expect you to know the mechanism there. It's not the range of the class, but the key takeaway here is you are demeaning the data partially. That's the key takeaway. So it won't appear in the exam. Okay. So what's important is you're partially demeaning, and that's all. Two, have uncorrelated in an effort to achieve uncorrelated errors. Okay. So fixed effects and random effects are both trying to achieve uncorrelated errors. Right. Good. In that sense, they have similarities, but there are some differences. I'll explain that. In a minute, but it's really showing that, again, you don't really have to know that, but it really implies that random effects estimator is the OLS slopes estimator when the data are partially demeaned. And they're using both between variance and within variance. The data are only partially demeaned, so between variances are not on entirely. Okay. So random effects models use both between effects, between variance and within variance. So that's where fixed effects and random effects models differ. Any questions so far? So let me give you an example. So the slope of 0.3 firm size, the beta coefficient is 0.3, for example. It really implies that a unit increase in the size of firms is associated with a 0.3 units increase in their ROE. The interpretation is really similar to OLS, actually, because they're using both between and within variance. Good. For a fixed effects model, it was only within variance, right? 0.3 of slope means that unit increase in the size of firms over time is associated with a 0.0 units increase in their ROE within that panel for the fixed effects models, right? But for our random effects models, you don't really need that restriction. Good. Questions? Nope. All right. Good. So it has an advantage of using more information, both within and between variables, right? So as a result, it offers an efficient estimate compared to fixed effects. Fixed effects only uses within variance, right? But random effects models use between variance as well. So it has abundant information. So it's more efficient. That's the strength of random effects. So I try to verbally explain what the mechanism is for the random effects estimator, but this slide is really optional, and you don't have to understand what's going on, but I'm happy to answer any of the questions you have for this slide, but I'll just skip the slide for this lecture. Good. And let's add ZI to the model. As you can see, ZIs and U0Is are not dropped, right? In the random effects estimation. It has two consequences. The first one is possible confounding from time constant variables. So you're not entirely controlling for B0I right there. So if there is a causal relationship from beta 0I to xit, then there's a confounding. If there are unobserved time constant covariates that confound the relationship between x and y, then you have a problem. And fixed effects really controls for beta 0I to deal with this problem, right? But random effects doesn't do that. And that's a weakness of the random effects model. Does that make sense? See the difference right there? Good. Oh, sorry. But then again, before we're moving over, but then again, if you want to, what you want to estimate here is the causal effect of Zi on Yit, then you can actually do that, right? In fixed effects models, they were dropped out, right? But in random effects model, you can do that. Does that make sense? I would like to make note that if certain time constant panel level variable Zi, time constant variable, is the only confounder, and then there's no other time constant confounders, then you can simply control for Ci. And you can have both unbiased and consistent and efficient estimator. If you use the fixed effects models, in this situation, you would have inefficient ones. You would have unbiased and consistent beta estimate, but it'll be inefficient. But in this situation, if you simply control for Zi while using random effects models, then you would have an efficient estimate as well. Reminder, you guys know what an efficient estimator means, right? You have, given the same sample size, you have more precise estimate. The confidence intervals will be narrower. Okay. So you don't have, it is less costly to gather more sample sizes to achieve the same level of confidence interval. All right, good. Any questions? Nope, we aren't. Again, these are formally stated right there. No exam materials. Happy to answer questions about it. So, but still no exam materials. So let's compare the fixed effects and random effects. As I said, U0I is a parameter to be estimated and fixed for each panel. And it controls away all the variations of time constant characteristics. So no confounding from time constant variables. but it's inefficient compared to our random effects. And you cannot really see the causal effect of time constant variables. For random effects models, it's U0i is a random variable that rather than something to be estimated and fixed away. And random effects model is more efficient than the fixed effects models because it uses both within and between variances of the panel data. But instead, it's still prone to the time constant confounders. Does that make sense? Yeah. And then again, fixed effects model. Still, fixed effects model, both fixed effects models and random effects model, they're both prone to time varying confounders still. But for time constant confounders, fixed effects got that issue covered, whereas random effects model doesn't. Good.
It's a little mark that's,
Oh, I'm sorry.
it's a little, sorry, just on everything. Like in every lecture, there's like, here's the minimum amount that you definitely need to know. That wonderful slide is it. You can use that slide to revisit other parts of the lecture because this slide summarizes all the key points.
Good. Thank you. So it's Felix. So these intercept differences is not the only source of serial correlation. So to really delve into that issue, let's talk about different ways to look at panel data. So far, we have only considered time points nested within panels, right? But alternatively, if you change the perspective, then in a way, individuals or firms are nested within each year. Does that make sense? They share times. Years are nesting panels, right? And it actually leads to two-way fixed effects models. So, for example, not really accounting for this situation would be a little bit problematic. For example, this is the mean data by panels from our running example. So all the panel specific intercepts are gone. But as you can see, there are some correlations among errors. By times, for T, it's positive. They're both positive. For T minus 2, they're both negative. Positive, positive, negative, negative. Does that make sense so far? Okay. And for C3, T3, they're both positive. For T4, they're both negative. Positive, negative, positive, negative. You see the point, see the pattern right there, right? So they are correlated, meaning that they can be expected from each other. Okay. And this leads to time-specific intercept differences. And it leads to serial correlations induced by time-specific variances. So between time points, there are differences, right, that are shared by all panels or firms. And then it is a problem in the sense of serial correlation. Any questions? All right. To resolve that issue, we are considering a two-way HLM. It's simply an HLM, but instead of just considering UI, panel-specific random effects, you are also considering WT, time-specific random effects. These time-specific random effects means that there are something going on with that time period that affects the outcome. For example, really means that if I give you an example, there is something going on with the time that really increases profitability even after you control run the regression of profitability on firm size. What would be the case? Yeah.
I mean, like, this is not profitability, but it's about cash, like.
Right. Yeah, the economic state will be right. So every firm has a similar, at least similar experience of economic disaster. Right? If so, the errors will be going down for all time points, for all panels, and therefore they would be correlated with each other. Does that make sense? So we're trying to deal with that. So just like one-way fixed effects models and one-way random effects models, we're just we could estimate in fixed all the time and panel and time-specific intercepts, or we could just separate them as random variables. Good. And two-way fixed effects models control away all omitted variables that vary across panels, but are constant across time, which is panel dummies, and also all omitted variables that vary across time, but constant across panels. Does that make sense? We're trying to control for these all panels error changes. We're controlling for that because it is coming from the say economic state that are shared by all firms. Good. We're trying to control away of that effect by deleting the data by each time point, not just panels. For example, the coefficient of firm size in two-way fixed effects regression of ROE is 0.3. It will imply that a unit increase in firm size within the same firm is associated with 0.1 units increase in ROE net of time effects. Good. Any questions? And unfortunately, they're not just the only two sources of serial correlations. There are others. So effect heterogeneity could be an example. As you can see, we have the different data from the running example, but the setting is same. For firm A, the relationship between firm A and between firm size and ROE, profitability measure, is negative. And for firm B, it's positive. And if you run the two-way fixed effects models by demeaning the data by panel and time, you're subtracting the means of all panel-specific mean and time-specific mean, then you would have that. What do you see there? Hello. All right, good. What do you see there? It's fine. There is a serial correlation from the panel perspective and time perspective. Weird, right? So far, we're obsessed with intercepts, meaning we assume the fixed or same intercepts, same slopes actually. Sorry, we assume the slopes will be same, but then now the slopes are different. If the slopes are different, then even after two-way fixed effects, we would have serial correlations, right, like that. You can expect each other from the others. P1 to T1 and panels as well. So in that case, random slopes models and or fixed effects models with robust standard errors could be used. But what I would like to emphasize here is basically the pattern of serial correlations should be judged theoretically rather than just looking at it, right? So you should really think about, there is a lot of tutorials about that, but it's just a side point, so this is not seriously important, but there has been some arguments that these serial correlations or correlated errors or heteroscedasticity in errors, all of that should be judged theoretically. And then you should think about what will be going on in the data to really judge would that happen, or the economic state would be affecting the profitability and that might affect the profitability levels of profit for all firms. All of that should be judged theoretically. Does that make sense? It's just not like the data are speaking, the data looks like the heteroscedasticity, whatever. You should not really think that way. You should really think about what could be the specific sources of correlated errors and all of that, and think about how to model regression model to deal with this possible issues. All right, any questions? Nope. All right, summary. So this is the last slide of the lecture. So far we have reviewed HLM. It's also called a random effects models because in the broader definition, because it has some random effects in the model, meaning that there are some unobserved components in the intercept differences across panels or groups, and that leads to correlation among errors. There's one source of that. And random intercepts model is a way to deal with the specific type of source of correlated errors. Random intercepts model is an HLM that allows the group-specific intercepts, but not slopes, to be random. So in the lecture so far, we have assumed the constant intercepts throughout the lecture. But random effects model in the narrower definition refers to random effects models with remaining randomness in the varying intercepts. It is not estimated or fixed away. It is just treated as a random error, or just simply separating it from the error, individual level error. But fixed effects model is just a random effects model with fixed group level effects for panel level, panel specific intercepts. Right? And the point here is panel data, and we covered the linkage between panel data and HLM. And panel data typically have autocorrelated errors, and therefore, or let's say standard errors are biased. But panel models are just simply a special case of HLM. And the difference between the fixed effects models and random effects model, or the relationship between the two, still holds, except that it's just time points are nested within panels. Does that make sense? So panel models is not a special thing. It is just HLM for panel data. Time-varying unobserved confounders are a remaining source of concern in the identification and estimation of causal effects, even with fixed effects. Meaning that time constant. Fixed effects models, random effects models, both try to correct standard errors, right? And for the slope coefficient per se, fixed effects basically controls for all time constant confounders, regardless of their observed or unobserved. They're gone, right? But random effects do not do that. Okay. But for time varying confounders, they're both vulnerable to that. Does that make sense? So we have 5 minutes left, but is there any questions? Oh, all right. So if there is no questions, then I'll give you a 1 minute summary of latent growth curve model. 1 minute summary. It's not appearing on the exam. That's fine. So latent growth curve models is about how outcome changes over time. Really, you're trying to find a pattern of how outcome changes over time, and then you are trying to find the slope differences when the independent variable is time. How the slope of time variable changes depending on certain characteristics. So it's a special case of random slopes model in HLM. Does that make sense? Good. And in this case, it's a linear form of slope is assumed for time variable, right? So it is assumed that the growth pattern is linear, right? But then, if you, as you can see right there, you can add time power, the power terms of time. So that way you can model the non-linear curve of growth. In this case, like how ROE changes over time, and then it could be non-linear. And then there could be some variances across groups, right? Across in the growth patterns, right? And then you're trying to explain that, why these growth patterns are different or not. Does that make sense? Okay, you can read that, and there are references, and yeah, that's the end of the slides. So, do you have any questions? Oh, thank you. Do you have any questions about the slide? All right, then thank you so much for coming here, and I'll see you. I guess you're required to come here. But yeah, still thank you. And I'll see you next Monday as your team. Yeah, so I'll be at the office at 4 exactly. So if you can wait a little bit.
sociology students. Remember that there's a talk by Bruce Western